Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Divorce Couch. I'm Jackie, and I'm a divorce coach based in the north of England.
Hi, and I'm Salma, and I'm a divorce coach based in London, UK.
Hi, I'm Simone, and I'm a divorce coach based in Germany.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm a divorce coach based in the north of Ireland.
Okay, so today what we're going to be chatting about is your personal divorce strategy. So what exactly do we mean by that? Well, really it's how do you want to show up during your divorce? Now, it's probably not something that most people give a lot of thought to, but actually as you're going through your divorce, you're going to face lots of challenges, and a lot of the time you might feel you don't have control over anything, but the one thing that you do have control over is you and how you show up and the decisions that you decide to make along the way. So we really just wanted to chat about how we've coped with those situations so that when you are going through your divorce journey, you can deal with things in the best way possible, but also with integrity. So who's going to kick off first?
I'm happy to kick off. I think one of the things that I learned from my own journey was I didn't have a strategy. I was hurt, I was angry, I was just really upset, and I was just going from day to day. I did not take any time to sit down and actually think, okay, how am I going to get through this, and who do I need to be in order to get through this in the best way possible, as you said, with integrity. And I found myself just playing the victim for a very long time. So all of my decisions that I was making I didn't make those decisions, but a lot of the decisions that I spoke about to my solicitor, my sisters and my friends, were very much from the position of being the victim. I just wanted it over. And if that meant that I was not going to fight for the things that I knew would affect my future, then so be it. All I wanted was to have it over and done with, and without actually sitting down and considering the implications of those decisions. I mean, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I often said to my solicitor was, I'm just going to give him the house. I don't want it, because in my head, I was thinking, if I do that, then this will all be over in 2 or 3 months, right? And what I wasn't thinking, well, what is going to be the long-term impact? Where am I going to live? What am I going to do? And so I think from that perspective, it's really important to early on to sit down and get your head around the emotions, so that then you can start making decisions, because these decisions are going to affect the rest of our lives. They're not just going to be with us for a day or a few weeks or a few months. They will literally affect the rest of our lives. And that's why I think it's so important to sort of sit down and have a strategy or plan. How are you going to approach this, and how are you going to be the best person that you possibly can be through this really difficult time?
Yeah, that resonates in that way. Is that I think I was a bit reluctant of making decisions. That decision making process is so difficult. But I had thrown every now and then. I had thrown some statements at me, like there is no theft in divorce. Just hide stuff. And and I could see then already. Then that was my narrative. I would not do anything wrong. I could sense I didn't like the decision making process, but I knew I wanted to do the right things. And as a coach, I kind of like the idea now that we make it very clear to our clients, that there is several levels in a divorce, but you want to know, and this kind of also means, how do you want to choose your lawyer? How do you want to play out this divorce? Are you going into a more aggressive way? Are you more into the win-win situation? Then maybe you are going to choose a lawyer accordingly. But that is also something I think I want to stress. You know what? What's your narrative going into the divorce? You know what? Are you going to fight? Or do you try to be more amicable? Or do you, I don't know, even if you go in passive, you know what, then you just have to also, you know what, understand and accept, you know what, then the other person will decide over you. It's just, you know what, then if you have a future hindsight, you know, whatever you had decided, you wanted it to unfold it this way. You know what, take the responsibility over, you know what, the outcomes. That's exactly what you just said, Salma, right? You know what, if you had given your house away, you know what, it would have been good for you to then know at one point, okay, well, then this is what I had chosen. I wanted to give away. You know what, just, you know, own it, own your decisions.
I think the idea of hindsight is such a good point, Simona, because I mean, I have learned so much in hindsight, which is why I have gone into coaching in this area specifically, because I feel if I can help somebody else to not have the length of journey and the emotional impact that I had because they could learn from my hindsight, then my journey will have been more worth it. Because I think we all do things and you look back and you think, oh, what have I done? But I think for me, I look back and I don't feel, for the most part, embarrassed by the way I showed up in the world. I didn't go out of my way to create any more upset than the upset of the situation. And I tried to keep my head down, and I tried to figure out how to do it. And I remember, you know, when we separated, I remember thinking, I want to do the journey along the way so that when the divorce comes through, I'm ready to live again. And I used that time, and I had a counsellor, and, you know, listen to what you were saying again, Simone, about choosing your solicitor. My solicitor resonated with me because she wasn't a shark. She wasn't known to be a shark, and I knew she would listen to me. I didn't want to be represented by somebody who wanted to get me every last penny just because they could, because that's not who I am. So, and the same way, you know, I had a counsellor, so she was part of my support structure in helping me to navigate how I went through, and she was able to ask, you know, questions of some of the stuff to help me to figure things out. And that's why I see the importance of what we do so much in this, because there is so much of a sense that depending on the story that you're coming from in your marriage and in your breakup story, regardless of which side that you're on, of almost like a righteous indignation to be angry or to be upset or whatever it happens to be. But if we don't, as human beings, take responsibility for the situation that we're in now, and we have to look at where we are now to be able to do that, then I think that's when you look back and you think, I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish I hadn't made that, you know, judgment call. I think it's easier to accept the responsibility with hindsight if you have put a bit of time and effort in along the way to go, okay, somebody is saying that this is something I could do, but is it something that I want to do? Is it something that sits well with me? So showing up as to what your value systems are and what sits with you, what does your gut tell you? These are really important things to stop and think about.
And I think it is important when you say to stop and think, because I think depending whether you're the person that's chosen to leave or whether you're the person where it may be sort of amicable, but if you're the person that's being left, there can be all those sort of anger feelings that are coming up, and they're the ones that are then driving your decisions, and they can actually drive you to, as I think it was you said, Salma, to even choose your support team accordingly, that you're looking for people. So I think it is very important to just pause and take time and allow some of those emotions to settle. And you know, again, that we can choose how we're going to behave in certain situations. And one of the things that brought me into divorce coaching, because I used to, you know, as you know, I used to be a divorce lawyer, but I would see clients coming into me and they would say, like you ladies have just said, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. I just want it over. I just need it over. What I always used to say to them is, right, I want you to imagine yourself in a year's time when these emotions have settled. You're sat with your friends, you've got a glass of wine. Are you going to be pleased with the decisions that you've made? And if you feel that in a year's time, you're actually going to say, why did I do that? Why did I do that? I wish I hadn't. Then don't do it. And so I realized then that actually you know, divorce is about so much more than the legal stuff. It's the emotional stuff that's actually driving your decisions. And so, you know, again, it's important to think we have control over how we're behaving. And even if we're in a situation where, you know, we're not all fortunate enough to have things amicable, sometimes things are very difficult. And if we have got somebody on the other side that is being particularly difficult, doesn't mean to say we have to be difficult back. We can still keep in our lane and deal with things with integrity. And, you know, we can still be the person that we want to be and not to allow other people to make us react in a certain way. So I just think it's quite important to pause and just, as you say, think about who do we want to be when we're looking back, and even when our children are looking back. What do we want our children to think of us?
Yeah,
you know, because they're the ones that are the bystanders in this. They're seeing how mum and dad are behaving. So what do we want they to think when we're sat having a conversation with them around the dinner table when they're grown adults? And we say to them, we have the courage to say to them, you know, how did you feel in the divorce? What do we want them to be saying back to us?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And I think when you're in that situation of divorce, there's a part of us that feels out of control and really like weak. And, you know, like we want to, you know, because there is a lot of chaos that goes along, you know, with the divorce process. And there's lots of things that suddenly you go from being in a place of where you knew where your life was going, and suddenly there's so many unknowns that we're dealing with. But I think if we can recognize not only our values, like Claire said, you know, how do we want to show up, what is important to us, but also to look at what our strengths are. You know, because sometimes we can forget that actually there's parts of us where we do have strengths, and we need to identify those strengths and use those and step back into those strengths so that we can start using those to move forward rather than just feeling incredibly powerless, because you can get to a place where you do feel like you don't have control over anything. But, you know, we do have control, but by stepping into our strengths, we can identify the options of what we do have.
Could you just elaborate on that a bit further? So maybe it's more clear what you mean by that, but for our viewers who, you know what, to step into your strength, what does that look like?
So I think from my own perspective, like, you know, I am a very organized person. I like to be able to know what the next step is, although I'm, you know, like sort of go with the flow sometimes. But for me, I recognize that's actually one of my strengths, to be able to stay on top of things. And during my divorce, I didn't do that. I just hid under the duvet, didn't want to open up the documentation, didn't want to answer any questions, you know, and I felt that if I'd used that strength that I use in my work life or my personal life and applied that to the actual, even the legal divorce process, it would have saved me being up the week before my Form E was due, like sort of being overwhelmed and struggling and thinking, oh my God, I got to get this done, and I got to get this, and I got to get these, 12-month statements. And it was just, I mean, I still remember the chaos of that week, but because I didn't apply the things that I normally would have applied to any other situation. I mean, there's no way that I'd be working on a project at work and I would open up that project the night before it's, you know, supposed to be done. I would plan it and I would look at the forms and I would get all the information together. It's not how I approached my divorce, because I didn't even think of having an approach.
I remember when I did my life coaching course with a German teacher, and it was loosely based on the Enneagram, and it just dawned on me this morning to maybe work with something which I might call, I don't know, like the Divorce Trinity. And we are all more or less, as humans, we are more prone to work with emotions, and then there are other people that work more with their brain, and then there are others again that are more prone to act. So basically what you've just described as a strength, this organization is more gut, yeah, I get things done. And I think what's important is, you know what, if you're aware of those strengths, because now I know what you mean, is look into those things that also need to be done. And if you can't do it on your own, get yourself help. I mean, if you are not very good with your emotions and you're overwhelmed with the emotions, then maybe it's very important to get yourself somebody that helps you with dealing with the emotions. And the lawyer who's representing, according to my new idea, is representing the brain part. That lawyer is only as good as you are able to brief that lawyer. So, and if you don't know what you want out of that divorce, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, Jackie, but then ask the lawyer. You know what? The lawyer doesn't really know in what way he or she should go, but then ask him. I mean, I've heard that there is something about custody. What do you need me to do? Because sometimes I'm quite irritated how little lawyers brief their clients what they need to be done. And it's kind of like then you have this void of two parties not knowing what to do, right?
I think it's, I think for clients with their legal team, it's quite important that they feel confident to instruct them, because that's sort of over here in the UK, that's the terminology that we use. You know, I'll take my client's instructions. So we can often look to our legal team to be telling us what to do, but our legal team aren't there to tell us what to do. They're there to tell us the legal options and protect us legally. So we have to have the confidence in order to instruct them. But, you know, they may give us a number of options, or they may sort of gear you in a certain direction because they maybe feel that's the best thing for you. But again, you don't always have to do exactly what they say, and it is important to find your voice really with your legal team. That's what I find anyway. Find your voice, and to be able to clearly state, well, this is how I want to deal with things. I have taken all your advice that you've given as my legal team, and this is how I want to proceed, because this is what I'm wanting to achieve at the end. Quite often people feel intimidated by their legal team. And, you know, one of the things that I like to do with my clients is just explain that, no, it is okay. It is okay to say to them, you know, well, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. If your legal team don't agree, they'll explain the implications. But ultimately, it is your decision what you do. So you do need to feel you've got that confidence to brief them properly.
Claire, before we go into a wrap up, is there something that you would like to add?
Yeah, one of the things that I've been thinking about just from listening to you, to all of you, is the idea, Simone, you brought it out there, that, you know, so you have the brain and you have your legal team, and that's an automatic thing. That's what we do, but we don't automatically think I might need help with my emotions. It doesn't sit in the same structure of necessary. And I look back on my journey and I think it is necessary, because we can get stuck in the emotions and then we end up blurring the role of the legal team. So the idea of our narrative and how we show up, if we can identify that there's a problem, why would we not try and do something to help to change it? And by that, I mean, who do we know that could help? Because actually we as humans, I think, resonate with other humans. And I think if you had someone you could talk to help you with the areas that you identify, that you will get through the whole process better. It will give you a better chance to come through it with more pride in yourself. And you come out the other side. And having someone to help you to point out what you were saying, Salma, about what are your strengths. You know, you're right. You wouldn't go into work without that. And if approaching a divorce allows you to think of certain things as a business deal, it changes your perception. So I think the value of coaching in the middle of a divorce process is having someone to help you to change your perspective on something, to normalize it to something that maybe you didn't think was an option or didn't know, because it will massively empower you to get through the process with so much more ability to come out the other side whole and well as you come through it.
Yeah, you almost, you know what, beautifully. I mean, Claire just brings things so nicely together, and that was almost the wrap up. So at the beginning of this talk, we said, you know what, approach your separation journey from the future. Who do you want to be in the future, looking back? You know what, can you sit together? I think Claire, you said, Jackie, you said that, you know what, could you sit together with your children and you know what, look in their eyes? And then they said, you know what, it was tough, but you know what, I could see you tried very hard. How do you want to show up? What are your values? And it all needs to connect. And the moment you feel this is who I am, but it's not connecting with my legal team, or I am stuck because I cannot organize, because it is, as you just said, Salma, it's not my strength, then you know what, team up with people. There are people out there, and it doesn't necessarily have to be very pricey. I know in Germany, there is also a lot you can find online to kind of get started. So then, you know what, if I really need to sign with somebody who might charge a fee, but I already kind of know what this is about, you know what, and unfortunately or not, it has a lot to do with responsibility. This is a whole undertaking. It's way more than just walking to the lawyer. It's from the split to you being alone again. It's a journey. And how do you want to walk it? With your head up high, and you'll get there. It takes responsibility and it takes guts. And this morning I was thinking, you know what, it's a balance between sometimes kind of like you have to push yourself through it. And then also please sometimes be very humble with yourself. It is tough. It is a very, very intense emotional time. So it's the balance between pushing yourself because it needs to get done, and look out for yourself so you don't crumble with that pressure. With this, thank you very much. If you liked this video, please just press on that little thumb, because the moment we know you liked it, it's maybe something we can dive into deeper in a future episode. And if you want to have another takeaway, just subscribe to our channel, so you'll be informed when we are up again with the next brilliant takeaway. Until then, thank you very much, and auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.